I need to start by saying I made a mistake recently. In fact, I think I did it a few times. I kept saying that Sri Lanka had an easy run in the World Chess Championship this year. And I don't know how I got that confused. But I know the details weren't massively in my head because Sri Lanka just haven't been relevant for a long time. From someone like me who covers like all the games, I can look at teams who are slipping and sliding or being good or goofy or interesting. But I think post Dick Weller being suspended for life and then playing 8 minutes later, I just kind of turned the lights out on the Sri Lankan red ball part of my brain. But a commenter let me know recently that despite the fact that I spent weeks coming up with my World Test Championship ratings, I had completely forgotten where I put each team. Because not only was I wrong when I said that Sri Lanka had an easy run, they actually had a really tough one. In fact, here is what I said exactly. Sri Lanka has the second hardest draw, and they don't have a great batting or bowling lineup right now. Maybe not even a competent one in either. This isn't going to help when they go up against the first, second, third, and fifth ranked teams. Hard to see them doing well at all. I had them as fighting not to finish last. In fact, I think I had them as favourites to probably finish last. And instead of that, they were the last team with the chance to make the finals outside of India and Australia. And even after they were ruled out of that, they still almost rolled the defending champs away from home. Now, of course, the last test against New Zealand hasn't gone as well for them. But I want to look at the entire World Test Championship for Sri Lanka up until this point. And if you look at where they were on the table, it probably doesn't look that incredible. But this is a very weird table. Essentially, India and Australia are the only two fully functioning test teams all the way through. New Zealand lost all of their form and retired a few players. Pakistan completely shit the bed with pitches and playing cricket. And England got very good very late. And so that means that South Africa is quite high up on this list, despite the fact that they cannot bat. And they possibly could have been even higher. Remember that Dean Elgar made a terrible decision at the toss that probably cost them a win against England, or at least the chance of another win. And that is the team I want to compare to Sri Lanka for a moment. Because South Africa were the second best bowling team in the world, just behind India. They found wickets very easy to get in this World Test Championship cycle. And when you look at the individuals, it's even more obvious how. Rabada took the second most wickets at a tick over 20. Their second best was Janssen, who had a very similar average while still taking an absolute bucket of wickets. Not a single Sri Lankan bowler took more than 40. Ramesh Mendes almost got there at a sub-30 average, and Prabhav Jayasuriya took his victims very, very cheap. But they didn't rise based on one or two bowlers being really good. They actually shared it around a lot more. So when you look at the two teams when it comes to batting, South Africa goes from up front to down back. And I think we all get that. But Sri Lanka did not change that much. They kind of stay middle of the road. But when you start to dig in, you see coming into this last test match, they had the player with the highest batting average in this WTC, Dinesh Chandimal. But they also have three players with high batting averages before you get to the one decent scoring South African. It's also a very weird world when Dhananjaya De Silva averages more than Dean Elgar. However, the truth is that Sri Lanka's batting is more or less the same as it was last time. What changed was that their bowlers all chipped in. They really struggled in the last cycle to take any wickets at all. Now, of course, I made this before New Zealand made 500 against them. But even so, for the majority of this World Test Championship, they were bowling really well. This is all of Sri Lanka's bowlers in those first 11 matches. And outside Vishwa Fernando's few bad games, everyone did okay. In fact, for the first 11 games of this cycle, he was the only bowler with a massively plus 40 bowling average. In the World Test Championship before this, that was their team mark. That's a remarkable turnaround. But to do it with no frontline star is even more incredible, just because all of their bowlers stepped up. And one of the reasons that no one has a high wicket tally is that no bowler played every game. In fact, DDS was the only guy to play in the majority of the matches, and he's at best a fifth bowling option. And even he still managed to keep his average around 40. That is a huge turnaround. But let's have a look at something even more fun. Away from home, the Sri Lankan seamers have done well, taking the majority of their team's wickets and holding firm with an average of 36. That is high for this era, but not too bad overall, especially as they don't get to bowl much at home. And by that I mean they only took 7 wickets in this World Test Championship cycle, compared to their spinners taking 97. Yes, this is ridiculous. So what Sri Lanka have done here is really make sure that their seam doesn't let them down as much as before, while finding a bunch of spinners to use at home, even when not everyone has been available. And if you go through their entire cycle, there's some impressive stuff in here. They beat the West Indies back-to-back, they didn't lose a test in Bangladesh, they split the series against Australia and Pakistan. You can see that outside of India humping them, they've been pretty good in every series they have played. That is why even before they played in New Zealand, quite a few of us thought they had a chance of winning a match there. And they very nearly did. It's quite clear that Sri Lanka is still not the complete package, and this latest test probably reminds us of that even more. But coming into this last match, this was their average per wicket. The two finalists, and just clearly the best sides, are way out in front. But Sri Lanka was third with a slight positive runs per wicket. Because we're still midway through the test match, I didn't get a chance to update that yet, but it shows that all the way through the World Test Championship, Sri Lanka were very much in the conversation as one of the better teams. Now in this video, I started off by saying how wrong I was. Let me finish with that as well. So far, I've picked 3 of the 4 finals in the World Test Championship. And very soon, I'll be trying to work out a new way to look at who's going to be in the next World Test Championship finals. India was always a fairly safe bet, so I don't give myself too much credit for them. Pakistan losing a test to Sri Lanka and the West Indies really slowed down their progress, but the reason that they haven't qualified for the final was their disastrous home legs against Australia, England and New Zealand. But the biggest error I made in all my calculations was that I had Sri Lanka as dead last. Of course, I had earned that by coming second last in the previous edition. So to go from that to even an outside chance of the final is quite a turnaround. And unlike what happens quite often in the World Test Championship, this wasn't about the schedule. Sri Lanka had a tough run, and they may not have made the final, but just getting anywhere near it was a huge victory, and it certainly wasn't a mistake.